Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Little Brain Campaign. I am your host, Dr. Lauren LaRose. I am a board-certified child and adolescent psychiatrist and adult psychiatrist. And in this podcast, I like to talk to individuals who are involved in any way, shape, or form with mental health, physical health of kids and their caregivers. If you are a returning listener, you know that I am especially passionate about increasing awareness about a condition called PANS. PANDAS is a condition within that. One of my children has PANS, and it's been my mission to increase education and awareness about that. So on that note, I have a wonderful guest here named Gabriella True, and she is from a group called Aspire. And she's going to tell us all about that group, what they do, and then give us, her backstory and how she got to where she is today. So thanks for being here, Gabriella.
Oh, I'm so happy that you emailed and asked me to join you. I was like, absolutely. It was a very fast response, and I'm glad to be here. And I've watched some of your YouTube videos of the podcast, and I've enjoyed those. So it's been wonderful to have more people talking about all of these neuroimmune issues and other health-related issues. It's so important.
It is so important. Okay, so tell us a little bit about Aspire.
So Aspire stands for the Alliance to Solve PANS and Immune-Related Encephalopathies. Mm-hmm. It's a mouthful. We like mouthfuls in the PANDAS world with our acronyms. We were founded in about 2018, 19, kind of blends. I had previously been the president of NPANS, which has folded into a couple other organizations since, New England PANS Pandas. And there was a whole group of us that would meet continually about what was happening in the PANS world, especially in those early days. When I was back at NPANS, I created one of the first handouts for PANS, and I created the first lecture for educators on PANS, starting with school nurses, actually. And it really became a discussion of how do we get this out of New England or out of our silos in our different locations, so we're not, there's so much to be done that why are we replicating everything? At certain points, websites were just copying the website, the one I had created for NPANS. So, which is fine, because we're all in it together, but let's do this more cohesively. So lots of meetings seem to take forever. But one day we sat down with Dr. Susan Sweeto, who is the originator of this disorder, and a couple of the other organizations that were not, particularly family gold, like PANDAS Physicians Network and PACE. And they said, we would fully support you starting a new organization that served as a bridge between providers, schools, and families, because, we don't handle the families or the schools as well as much or ever. So, and then, of course, there's the whole legislative aspect. So, there's a lot to do. Can you help? And so we created this sort of build it, they will come, grow and expand as we can. It's hard to run an organization when you've got kids who are sick or you may have PANS yourself as an adult. So being able to have a structure that's flexible, that sort of highlights, it may shift and change depending and finding your niche of what you can do with the volunteers that you have. We're a 100% volunteer staff. I don't get paid. No one does. So, there's that too. We have to respect everybody's time and limits and know that we all have pretty sick kids or have had sick kids at a certain point. So being able to sort of roll with the punches is really important. But, then it became like, what are we going to do? And, really thinking of who would our audiences be, looking at it from that perspective and then figuring out projects around it. And, of course, there's the general public and wanting PANS in a way to be a household name. So you say to someone, oh, he has autism. Now that person might not really understand what autism looks like, but they're not like, autism? What is that?
Right.
So we want the reduction of PANS. I've never heard of that. So that's the general audience. And of course, supporting doctors and researchers where we can. We do grand rounds and lunch and learns and things like that. We don't do the big conferences. Like Neuroimmune does a beautiful job on that. And Alex Manfield does their symposium every other year. And then, of course, schools and educators is a big one. Then policymakers is a small percentage of our day to day because, of course, we're not a lobbying organization. And then,
Right.
the families and the patients really looking at the kids and giving a big voice to the adult population because
Mm-hmm.
they're too often missed. And then creating projects around those.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So tell us, how did you get to this point? Why are you involved in this?
Why am I involved? As fate had it,
Mm-hmm.
I have two boys. They're twins, and back when they were quite young, we were living in California, and we were at the ABA clinic because one of them has very, severely impacted with autism,
Mm-hmm.
and the other one had a few things going on. So went to a center based. We had been in home before that, and there was a brochure in the waiting room for an autism called Taka,
Mm-hmm.
and they were having a meeting, and I was
Mm-hmm.
like, "Oh, it might be good if I met some other autism parents besides just in this
Yeah.
place." And they talked a lot about diet and changes, and so I was like, "Diet? I don't what do you mean diet or
Mm-hmm.
like supplements?" And I had no idea what it meant. I mean, I don't know where I would have found this information if it wasn't for this printed newsletter.
Yeah.
And so my mom was coming out, and there was a conference put on by a different autism organization. And I think it was Mumper, who's on the, Middle Coast, was uh, giving a lecture
Mm-hmm.
on beginning biomedical interventions for autism. And I was like, I want to go to that. So we went to that, and it was free.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother and I looked at each other. We're like, we're doing this. And so I quickly became very ensconced in the autism world, learning as much as I could, working, finding friends. And one of my friends, Sim, there had been day support groups, but sometimes we just needed moms to get
Yeah.
together and hang out and have a
Yeah.
good time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like also talk about all the things you talk about with autism biomed, and then all the things that you do for an IEP and how to get services. And she's just like, yeah, but we need to do this at night so we can have a cocktail. So, in our group, and there was a whole bunch of us, some in San Diego County and Orange County, and we called ourselves the PETAs,
Mm-hmm.
Community Asked Parents. And it mostly came out of, dealing with school districts.
Mm-hmm.
And so we started having this support group. And around that time, so that would have been, my boys were 2004, 2007, 2008-ish,
Mm-hmm.
people started whispering things about this thing called PANDAS. PANS hadn't been coined really yet,
Right.
not in terms of a full descriptor of all the symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, oh, I don't know. It just was this thing that gelled in my mind that made sense. And I became sort of the resident expert on pandas
Mm-hmm.
and, talking to doctors about what they were doing about pandas. And so I didn't even really suspect it in any of my kids at that point. They were
Mm-hmm.
like 3, 4 years old. And then Timothy was just different. Like he was the chillest kid with autism. He had no OCD. He was just like, you could put him on any side of the car. You could do anything you wanted with him, change it up. He ate everything. He did all the things, like no picky eating. He couldn't speak. He had low functioning, all those things. And I feel safe saying low functioning with him. I
Yeah.
don't normally use those terms with a lot of kids,
Mm-hmm.
but I won't go into all that. But
Yeah.
and he was crying all the time. Couldn't be in school. He'd cry so hard till he threw up, and then I'd get
Oh.
picked up, and I'd walk in, and he'd be like, "Mom," and he hadn't really paid that much attention to me because he was
Mm-hmm.
that very parallel play type of autism.
Yeah.
And then suddenly he's like leaping into my arms, and I'm like, this is great,
Mm-hmm.
but why?
Yeah.
And, it's hard because back then we didn't know what all the symptoms of PANS were.
Right.
It said tics or OCD, didn't talk about restricted eating,
Uh-huh.
which often is tied to OCD, as you
Yep.
know, and sensory, but it didn't talk about urinary frequency, changes in
Mm-hmm.
handwriting, other developmental delays, all those things that, really created a very bigger picture of what to
Yeah.
look at. And so trying to figure out OCD in a nonverbal, low expressive and receptive language kid isn't exactly the easiest thing.
Right.
And then I was talking to some people, and I was like, do you think it's pandas? Like, I don't know. And so this one doctor was coming in town who was going to move to California, Dr. Rosvignol, who's based in California and Florida. And we had a quick meeting, and he was just like, it really sounds like it. He's like, I've seen Timmy before. He's like pretty chill. And I was like, pretty chill? And he was not chill. He was
Yeah.
like not chill. And so we got on a plane, flew to Florida because we didn't want to wait till he moved his license to California.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom met us there. She lives in New York City. And he says, okay, mom, grandma, you're going to go next door to the CVS and you're going to pick up azithromycin while we do testing.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, let's just try it. He's like, let's do a treatment trial. So we did a treatment trial. We ended up at Disneyland 3 days later. Disney World.
Wow.
Yeah. And he was walking all around. His twin brother, on the other hand, was like this. Sorry, Xander, you were. I have pictures to prove it. Anyway, so that's how I got started in the pandas world, really with the patient, knowing that Xander was bringing strep, his twin was bringing strep into the house all the time.
Okay.
Little did I know that he should have been diagnosed at the same time, because
yeah,
trying to understand OCD, I will say that OCD and the lack of understanding it is the whole PANS community, one of our biggest barriers to diagnosis.
Yes.
Because do you find that in your field of medicine, coming from psychiatry, that a lot of the pediatricians and the therapists don't actually truly recognize OCD?
I feel like even in my own profession, and like I have had to learn so much about OCD and how differently it can present in different kids. And I'm a child psychiatrist.
Right. Yeah. And how many of our kids have the more pure O, or whatever we're going to call it, where they don't have those physical compulsions. We're expecting everybody to just wash their hands, line up the toys, be very rigid, and we don't know how many of these mental compulsions they're running through all day. And that was more the profile of my other son. And, and we were very involved with our group, like making sure that the siblings were well supported, because we knew that autism, especially on, could be stressful for the whole family.
Yes.
And so we're like, wow, he's just the most compassionate kid. He's got the empathy in spades. Like maybe he needs to relax a little bit, but he made me get out of the shower and want to discuss how I would needed to put a binder together for his future wife and him to take care of his brother. Like, you're 5.
Yeah.
With terror, like truly terrified.
Yeah.
Truly. And unfortunately, because of finances and the lack of insurance, we sat on his case for too long.
Yeah.
For very, very long. So fast forward, the birth story of Aspire and how we got involved in the PANS world. We moved to Connecticut sort of unexpectedly. And Xander and Timothy were both flaring at the same time. And we didn't have a doctor that we had moved into, changed. And so there was a lot of just holistic interventions with trying to cobble together some care with the pediatrician, getting as much antibiotics as we possibly can, and doing all that, basically leaving to mostly undertreated kids, which is not a good thing, because we wouldn't ever want to delay treatment on anything. And that's a problem in our community and the doctors, is delayed care. And so, I was still doing stuff with Taka, running the Connecticut office. And I met somebody who's now one of my best friends. And he's like, we want to put on a pandas conference. I was like, great, have fun. I'm really busy. And he's like, no, but I need you to help. And I was like, yeah, okay. You can put me in the email chain. That was in August. By December, I was president of the organization. So, that's how it was. And it was a great conference. It was in Norwalk, Connecticut, 2015, over 200 people. We were at capacity, waiting list, people like, please let us in. I was like, fire marshal, he's here. I cannot let you in. And that was a great conference. And that really started it all. And then, I was with NPANS, and they're a wonderful organization, mostly in Massachusetts and Connecticut. And, at that point, we're in end of middle school. Timothy is doing great with the PANS. Actually, so much stuff had cleared up. He had like some autistic behaviors that really still really fit more autism than PANS, but
Right.
they all cleared up too.
Mm-hmm.
And just like his gut health got better, everything got better. He wasn't growing at all. Like we had
Mm-hmm.
done all the tests, like that hand scan test
Yep.
and all of that. And nothing, and then just massive amounts of antibiotics and diflucan, and he suddenly grew. I was like, I had to call him in, tall to
Huh.
school, like, because he suddenly grew overnight.
Wow.
It was wild. Like all these things that you don't expect to happen because they're
Yeah.
not part of the whole just like perfect PANS picture
Yep.
help as well.
Yep.
And then my other son, he actually got much worse. Then Lyme and Bartonella were involved.
Mm-hmm.
Missed a lot of school, a
Mm-hmm.
year and a half. Part of that was during COVID lockdown. So the timing is like he was there, but not really. Like
Right.
if COVID hadn't happened, he would have fully missed a year and a half of school.
Right.
And then a different placement for senior year. But he graduated and he's working as an electrical apprentice, mostly on roofs, which as a mom that it never ends. Your terror
Yep.
for your
Yep.
kids, right? Oh, like me crying, like it's gonna be icy. Can your dad drive you? Mom, I'm 21
I'm an
and
adult.
I'm going to work on my own. And I'm like, I don't know if that's a great idea. So, that was horrible. I've been through all of it. I don't talk a ton about every detail of his journey, some of them, mostly because of privacy and he's older. But, we were in true pandas hell. No school, with the rages, with the OCD, the anxiety. It's also crippling.
Yeah.
And I was diagnosed along this way too, which is a whole other thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think, what happened was that I mostly had strep so many times when they were bringing strep into the house.
Yep.
And I had suicidal ideation before,
Mm-hmm.
mostly when I was going off in Zoloft.
Mm-hmm.
It did not work for me. And, but this was very different. But again, not my very fancy doctor in like Bel Air, Los Angeles, did not identify as what I was having as OCD.
Wow.
I was like, but it just doesn't feel like the last time. And it was all self-harm related OCD. Like it was like, but you thought it. So therefore it's true. Like it must be true. And you better go tell somebody about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would like tell everybody. I was like, so I'm having thoughts of suicide, but I don't really want to kill myself. But it was constant. Like I had no way to stop myself. It was lots of blurting and reassurance seeking. And I had a strep infection. I went to the doctor. He was like, whoa, raging strep infection.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember if that's the one where he gave me the shot of steroids or not. So I went back home with Augmentin, the taper steroid. And I was like, yeah, I just don't know if I'm safe. Like, I'm not sure. Like, I really don't want to do this, but my brain keeps telling me I had. And so I walked into the hospital and I was like, this is what's happening. And I was like, I don't really think I should be put in the psych ward because I really believe I'm not going to hurt myself, but it keeps telling me I can. And they were like, woo, let's lock her up. So off I went to a 72-hour hold.
Wow.
Where they forgot to let 5 of us out on a Friday.
Oh no.
Because she had to go home early. So I was there for 5 days.
Oh my gosh.
The thing about that. Okay. So I like to try to find a little silver lining. The thing about that being 5 days helped me later with the overall picture. Because I certainly didn't put it together then. Nobody did, of course. Was that by that time I had been on Augmentin 6 days and I had 1 day left of a 7-day taper pack. And I was fabulous.
Yeah. Huh.
I mean, truly, I was like, I haven't felt this good in years. And people were like, oh, well, you must have really needed a break. I was like, no one gets a break at a psychiatric institute.
No.
Like,
did the medical providers in the psychiatric hospital recognize that? No, of course not.
No, I don't even know if I saw a medical person.
Oh,
truly.
wonderful. Lovely.
I mean, I don't think that was part of the plan. I don't remember seeing any doctor for more than like 2 seconds if I did. Like they were not, there was a lot of group.
Yeah.
And so they're like, you just needed rest. And I was like, okay, well, I will not discuss what my roommates had been going through,
Right.
but like there's no rest to be
No.
had in there.
Nope. Nope.
None.
It's not a pleasant place to be.
No. So I was like, this isn't making any sense. So fast forward many years, when we were in Connecticut, then I had this thing called a cholesteatoma, which is an ear growth, and
Oh, okay.
I had to have many surgeries for that. No bones in here. I have a metal stapes, which is your smallest bone in your whole body.
Uh-huh.
I have a titanium one. Anyway, I call it platinum because I forget the real word. People are like, Gabriella, it's titanium. I'm like, platinum sounds fancier.
It does.
Anyway, so through that, I had lots of infections.
Uh-huh.
So back came that OCD that I still had never identified.
Mhm.
And that was very wrapped around my kids. I needed to hug them just right.
Mhm.
And they were always late to school because my husband had to hide my keys because I wanted to go down there
Oh, wow.
and check on them. They were like they were 8, 9 years old at this point. So like, you don't have moms waltzing in to hug them just right. My husband had to like literally lock the door.
Wow.
Anyway, and then again, because of being infected, I went on augmented again. This time they gave me 16 days. I had been on a bunch of them. And then it still hurt in my ear because this tumor thing hadn't been diagnosed yet. And then they gave me steroids again. And he's like, you do well on steroids or do you go like a little cuckoo bird? I was like, no, I did great the last time I was on steroids. I was like, this is a good combination for me. And then I was like, what did I just say? And then I was like, let me do the steroids because I must have been feeling better if I went back to the ER. And I was like, give me something else.
Yeah.
And so suddenly I'm like calling schools, like, I can come in now. I can come in and do this lecture. Let's do this. I had about 7 lectures booked in about 2 days when I hadn't really done any of that because I was too stressed to do that. And so then I called my son's doctor and I was like, look, we got to meet about me. And so we went through everything just like you do with a kid. And they were like, oh, yeah. Like, you're really a very adult. And so like it brings to that question, which we see in those, with parents and kids and adults, like in the language, pediatric is in the name, pediatric autoimmune neuropsychiatric syndrome associated with strep, pediatric acute,
right.
And how do we handle that? And it's always, Dr. O'Hara talks about it in her lectures of like, let's just not talk, just eliminate the issue and talk about basal ganglia encephalitis, right?
Right.
And that's one way to do it. And I agree with that. I haven't had a lot of luck with that in the mainstream world for myself in terms of treatment. But I still talk about PANS, because I feel like I have to as, Aspire president and, really trying to give a voice to not just the kids, but the adults too. And not just the kids, the adults that have had, onset at 4 and these symptoms are still hanging on due to various different reasons, under treatment, delayed treatment, haven't found all the triggers. Maybe there's Lyme, maybe there's Bartonella that hadn't been figured out. Maybe they got COVID. That's been a big problem with, and really looking at, so I definitely had soft signs as a kid. So I understand talking about soft signs as a kid. I definitely had them. We know times when I never had strep, but I had impetigo, which can be strep with staph.
Yep.
And how those coincide with periods of where I was much more difficult.
Yeah.
Like with separation anxiety, handwriting changes. We went back and looked and I can see the handwriting changes.
Wow.
It's weird.
That's wild.
But like, I don't remember urinary frequency. I don't know if I had any major behavioral regression. Like, so even if you took little Gabriella at age 7 in Savannah, Georgia, would I be diagnosed if you took me to, one of the doctors down south that sees PANS with kids? Would they diagnose me? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Right. They'd have been like, it's so mild, like, or let's do a treatment trial. Like, let's see what happens. Because there are different severities of PANS, very mild and moderate. And then they call severe, which I would think should be recoined crisis.
Yeah.
And part of that, I think people don't understand the mild because again, with how the criteria is written as, there's the whole abrupt thing. That's but then there's, but what's added to abrupt, which is very important, is acute. And acute means, very significant in terms of symptomology.
Mm-hmm.
And the original pandas really had to be, it wasn't just ticks, it was severe ticks. That's
Yeah.
how it was written. They were really pushing the severity of this. And I think that's given a little bit of a halt to getting some of the more mild kids diagnosed. So as much as
Yes.
we say all the time, earlier recognition with early diagnosis to quick and appropriate, keyword appropriate treatment leads to better outcomes.
Yeah.
But if we're missing the low severity kids and not catching them until they're, at least high, moderate to crisis,
Yeah. Yep.
we're not getting them in the early stages.
Yep.
So, I kind of feel like I'm, that canary, old canary, old canary that says like what happens when you don't treat. And I
Yeah.
remember when we first founded Aspire, which was about, again, I think 2018, 19, our first thing we did was go to the IOCDF conference and have a table, because it just worked with the timing, and it's a good place to start, especially
Mm-hmm.
because I'm so passionate about people understanding what OCD really looks like and
Yeah.
finding that as an identifier.
Yep.
We were talking to a lot of adults, and by the end, it was a whole group of us. There were like 5 or 6 of us there. It was great. And women would come up to us and would say, I think I might have this.
Uh-huh.
And I'd look at them, they'd go, Gab, this is yours. You're up, Gab. And I would say, okay, let me ask a question. Are you a school teacher? Or do you
Mm-hmm.
work with kids? And they're like, yeah, how do you know? And I was like, are you around strep all the time? And they're like, yeah, we had so much strep the year I didn't feel well. And it
Mm-hmm.
goes back to, the work of the great mice model works of Jurtado Aguiu out of Colombia, where he talks about it's repeated strep infections that create this self-autoimmune attack onto the
Yeah.
blood-brain barrier, and
Yep.
the blood-brain barrier becomes leaky. So it then, the antibodies to strep can cross over into the brain and then
Right.
start to attack the basal ganglia.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, you're at repeated strep infections as an adult. I really want to study on that. Of course, I'll probably never get it, but I am, hell bent on getting a study of teachers and, like that are around strep a lot.
Yeah, that would be so
And seeing,
interesting.
like, are they at more risk for being an adult onset?
Yep.
And because I would ask them, like, do you think you had any soft signs as a kid? And some of them are like, yeah, maybe. And then some were like, no, absolutely not. And, I think it's just an interesting side piece.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And something I want to jump back to that you started talking about was like the whole, how acute and abrupt onset is in the criteria for
Yeah.
PANS and PANDAS. And something that has been hard, like for my family in particular, is that my son was so young when he got sick, when he had walking pneumonia, which we
Right.
think was like the inciting illness for his PANS, that like, when you have a kid that's 20 months old, it's impossible to know, like, when new behaviors pop up, are they just part of normal development because
Right.
they're only 20 months old, or are they actually pathological? So, when we first saw a doctor for it, it was like, it may have been acute at the time, but we're now 4 years past that. There's no way for us to know. So I feel like a lot of kids probably get missed with, because of that criteria too,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the PANS doctors
Mm-hmm.
will talk a lot about how you can miss that onset
Yep.
due to low severity as little kids. And we know that too many doctors like to say, especially in the panda strep world, oh, well, your kid can't get strep before age 2.
Huh.
So there's that. It's another problem
Uh-huh.
that I just throw in there
Yeah.
as a problem. But yeah, so now we have a whole chart on our website, and we talk a lot about it in our school talks when we talk at schools, and Pandas Physician Network talks a lot about the range of severity.
Yeah.
So I think that topic of maybe it's not just the acute part has started to evolve a bit,
Yep.
which is good. And then there's the abrupt. So all of our literature, there may be a few of old pieces out there because it's hard to get every one of them because we've produced so much literature over the years. It's abrupt or newly worsening.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So that's not a full committal to a slow, insidious onset, except that, if we look at the cohort out of Stanford, so Stanford, for those who don't know, Stanford has an incredible PANS clinic, but it's a research clinic. And so with research, you're always looking to narrow the cohort.
Right.
And so their parameters of who they let into the clinic, who they treat, is pretty narrow.
Right.
But I wish I had the numbers. I'm very bad at numbers, and I blame pandas with that because we can have, I blame it all the time. That's my shtick. Anyway, so I think it was like 35 or 45%, and we're not quoting me. It's correct in my presentation, though. But I don't have the slide in front of me, where they're not all abrupt onset. So there was something like 82% had a clear strep or possible strep-related onset. And then something like 30 or to 40%, and I know that's a big difference, weren't exactly abrupt.
Okay.
A little slower.
Right.
And they see a lot of patients, and they have a tight cohort. So, that number, if I knew it, would be a great number. But really looking at what's happening. The other thing I'd like to talk about is, we talk about you could lose it in the childhood 3s, the terrible 2s, like what are we missing? They start to go to preschool. They have some separation anxiety. Could it be that? Oh, they haven't learned how to regulate. They're trying to regulate off of mom, and we're not always the most regulated ourselves.
Right. Correct.
So and if you don't really understand co-regulation, it's tough.
Yeah.
Anyway, so also the thing is that they're also become part of school and into the petri dish of school.
Yes.
And around strep. So if they get the strep throat, okay, and they get treated for that one strep throat, that means that they're partially getting treated for pandas.
Right.
So some of their symptoms kind of resolve, but we may not be back at baseline.
Right. Right.
Because we're not, if we look at the treatment triangle where we want to remove the source of inflammation, basically if we have a Bunsen burner burning up your computer, you want to turn that Bunsen burner off.
Right.
And then the next part is treating the dysregulated immune system, because once we turn, we say we kill that strep. And of course there's many other triggers, but it's, our immune system isn't always like, great, we're going to act great now. Like,
it doesn't bounce back immediately.
I can do it. Like that inflammation doesn't come back down immediately.
Right.
Inflammation in the brain after strep and some of these other triggers can naturally come down over a very long period of time.
Right.
But we'd prefer to do it a little faster.
Right.
Anyway. And then the immune system itself can get dysregulated, and there are different modes. And then there's the psychotherapeutic arm. So if that kid has strep at, say, 3, and then they get it at 3.5, and then their sibling brings it, and they may not have a bad case of it. So, or mom's like, oh, you're not bad. I'm not taking you into the doctor. I'm just going to get antibiotics for your brother, and you're probably fine.
Right.
So we have kids who are treated, untreated on one arm of the triangle. So so they may have a profile that's a little anxious or a little, Johnny, he's always been a little aggressive. Oh, he's ADHD. He's just a boy,
right.
And meanwhile, mom's like, that's what you see in the playground. But when I go home, it's like,
yep.
So much harder. So that kid is likely to get classified as, oh, they've always been mopey. They've always been anxious. Oh, she's always been such a mommy's girl. She never wants to leave her side. So then you go in and say everything's so much worse. And the doctor is like, well, it can't be PANS because they've always been like that.
Yeah.
And so to me, the newly worsening is really important because, we got to acknowledge, sure, they might have been really anxious for a while. And they could just be anxious kid. Like some of us are anxious, and so we want to be able to not say they don't have it. And the same thing when we're at school. So like that part of the dialogue really came up with me talking to the schools, because I didn't want them to say, because a lot of schools, not all, but many will discount the diagnosis. It's getting better a
Yeah.
little in some areas of the country.
Uh-huh.
Others not so much.
Correct.
I'm sure some
Hence
of,
where I live.
yeah. And so, I was like, they may have a caseload
Mhm.
already in the
Oh,
504
yeah.
section. So they may already have ADHD and executive
Mhm.
functioning and anxiety or whatever. We get an alphabet soup of diagnoses. And so I don't want them to go, we're just adding another diagnosis. It's no big deal. Like, this is all so silly. And so really I spent a lot of time making sure that they can, even though it's a diagnosis of exclusion, meaning they can't be better, the diagnosis of PANS we need to exclude other medical issues,
Right.
but they can still have anything from the DSM-5 for what
Right.
that's worth,
Right.
Yeah. So I think, there's a lot of things to look at with that, what
Mhm.
that abrupt means and what acute means, and really how we use that language. And, as parents, when we go into a new doctor, sort of being able to understand that well enough
Yep.
so that they can advocate well enough. So it may not be like, I know at 5 o'clock on Tuesday afternoon, my kid was a completely different child.
Right.
And there are those. There definitely,
Yes, there
I
are.
mean, 1000%. But we need to be able to talk about that more insidious slow onset, or some of the things that we missed because we chalked it up to something else. So
Yep.
being able to really understand where the nuance is in that, and the nuance, how it reflects in your child, and being able to like sort of build your case. I'm not trying to say like, you say it so that you can get the PANS diagnosis, because, you want it to be the right diagnosis
Right.
no matter what. But, being able to frame it in a way that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So with Aspire, are you going to schools all over the country? Is it only like certain areas of the country that you go to?
We go where we're asked.
Okay.
So, um, we've done over, I think, 300 now to
Wow.
schools. Some of them are repeat customers, so
Yeah.
that's included in there. Like, there's a school in the Pacific Northwest that has us back every single year.
Wow.
And now it's, every single year. There's a
Mhm.
few in the Massachusetts area that I've been there every single year
Yeah.
since almost 2016 when I did
Yep.
the first one. So, but then we have this map on our website, under, it's like calling all educators, which is our where our information about our in-services.
Mhm.
And so I was like, let me we did a legislative map of
Mhm.
where things passed. I was like, let me do one for school. So, like 1 a.m, bad sleep habits that I have, I'm putting in these pins. I was like, this is, and I was like, wow. And you could really see. So for a while, it was definitely the Southeast and the Southwest.
Mhm.
And actually, like Wisconsin, South Dakota, North Dakota, any of those, like it's sort of a big dead zone
Mhm.
of care. There's some doctors in Wisconsin, but like the Dakotas, there's nobody
Yeah.
really. Wyoming, there's one naturopath. Um,
Wow.
and I mean, she was trained by someone, in Colorado, Dr. Kindler, who's very good. So I'm sure she's very good, but, like, I don't know if I've been to any of those schools. So usually a parent will go into their school and say, will you consider doing a training? It's
Yeah.
a lot easier if they have an IEP, because then the IEP, there's an legal expectation that
Right.
the staff is educated on the condition they're
Right.
teaching to.
Right.
So then they come to me and I arrange something, and they used to all just be live Zoom. Now we have them a lot recorded so that they can just have one. If only one person's going to show up, they can do it. It's
Yeah.
free too. So like, we don't put them through a budget. Like, we just want the information in the school's hand if
Yeah.
anybody wants to listen.
Yep.
And then now, if schools download our comprehensive education toolkit, which is a multi-page explainer of PANS and stuff like that at school, now we have a way to email them and say, now that you've downloaded that, you can access this teacher only accessible or school only accessible webinar. And
Okay.
and and the reason at school, like a lot of schools really like to think that they're the only ones watching it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's really, and it's just me saying all the same stuff we talk about on the website.
Yeah.
It's not like anything revelatory to parents. Like
Yeah.
you can all read it in the toolkit too, and they all know it daily with their lives. So we just have it available for the teachers. So we've been all over. I think I've gotten a bunch more Georgia lately.
Mm-hmm.
We did the largest school district and the third largest school district this month.
Oh, great.
In the live ones. And so I'm about to email the second one. I go, you're the second largest school district and you're the only one of the top 3 not educated parents. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
We'll see if I get anywhere that. I'll say it very southernly though. I used to live in Georgia too. I can pull it out. Anyway, and so we have been seeing people, once they download it, people have been watching the video. So being able to expand that, they someone's like, go to Aspire and download this. And they do. And, and then now they can watch a video. So that's expanded the reach a lot. Massachusetts by far and away is the best educated because that's sort of where I started. And the school nurses have been incredibly supportive with that.
Yeah.
They gave me my first break.
Yeah.
I was doing it with Dr. O'Hara, who's one of incredible integrative doctor and on our advisory board. And we would call it our dog and pony show. And so she would do the medical part and then I would come in and do the school part or whatever. And, we would drive all over Connecticut and do that. And one time she was like, it would have been faster to go to Brooklyn, New York than Brooklyn, Connecticut. I was like, I told you it was far. Yeah. And I love the live ones because you could see the nurses' eyes going like this. They're like,
yeah.
And you could see them like, that kid, I know that kid had panda.
Yeah. Yep.
And like some of them would get emotional or super excited. Like I remember this one nurse, she was like, I've got to find that family.
Yeah.
I've got to find that. Like she still cared so much, and it'd been like 6 years, it still makes me emotional. She's like, I've got to find them. I know that's what it is. I know that's what it is.
Yeah.
And then there was a few teachers that I was like, well, you don't really have any doctors out here. And then the pediatricians. And she says, well, sometimes because we're such old battle axes. That's how she described herself, not me. She said, we call them up and go, listen, doc, you've known me for 20 years and I know I've never said anything crazy in my life except that time, on that one weekend when we had the barbecue, and you're going to treat this kid and you're going to get him antibiotics. So when I speak to school nurses, I always I say to them, I was like, you guys are the best ones. I was like, I always challenge all the other school groups, like the school psych and the, come on, do as good as the school nurses.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Boots on the ground.
Yeah.
Well, Gabriella, I really appreciate you speaking with me and sharing all of your experience and your knowledge. How can people find Aspire?
So it's www.aspire.care, care. It's a little different. Or you just type into Google Aspire PANS. There's about 500 Aspire companies in this world. There's Aspire supplement companies, Aspire therapy companies, so many of them. But if you go Aspire PANS PANDAS, we come up right away. If you can't remember the .care part. And of course, we're on Facebook at aspire.pans, and Instagram at aspire.pans, and LinkedIn. I don't know if we're on the X or the other. I think so. I think we still have a volunteer, which I never think, oh my God, I need to do that today. I think she sometimes puts stuff on X for us, but I'm so bad at looking there that I just rely on her. She's amazing.
Well, plenty of other places to find y'all. So thank you so much.
We have some old, wonderful, great webinars too. And I'll do a link in our playlist that'll have this.
Okay, great. Wonderful. Well, thank you, Gabriella. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Have a great weekend. We're at Friday. So
yeah, we're there. We made it. Bye. Bye. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Little Brain Campaign podcast. If you enjoyed our conversation, give us a follow on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. Please take a moment to leave a review while you're still thinking about it. It really helps grow the podcast, and I love hearing from our listeners. See you next time.